The all-new Brackett Show. Brackett Show. And now, here's Chris Brackett.
There's deer all over. There's deer all over my cameras right now while we're filming this. It's like they're coming off lockdown, but I haven't seen any big boys. There's 4-year-olds everywhere. He literally, this buck just took a picture on one side of the farm and hit every camera all the way through. This buck looks like I feel right now.
Oh man, you show me your phone and pictures the way like a dad shows pictures of his kids.
Oh, this is my
You're like
baby.
So excited, yeah.
This is my split too. I am so beat up from the last week of my life. Like, I feel like I am just so beat up. I feel like I'm, frazzled to the core, that I've been in a tree. I haven't had much sleep. I've had, deer camp where I'm, have friends over. I'm cooking bacon, I'm cooking eggs, and everybody's coming in from all over. And we just had Jared and Jeremy from the Hunter podcast. They went to Iowa, crushed 2 giants over there. Their podcast dropped that I'm on. It's like a 3-hour just deer session of deer stuff. So you can listen to that, just guys talking about deer stuff in camp. We did a live one of the nights. The night before that, we hadn't caught up in a while, so we stayed up till 1 in the morning, then got up at 4 and hunted. And I feel like I can't catch up. I'm also created my own little deer camp because I'm out at my Airbnb. There's nobody booked, so I've just lived there and bachelored out for a week and just hung out. And I should be rested, but I'm just not. Every minute I'm in the stand, I'm on edge because I'm real close to this bedding area, and I know it could happen at any minute. So I keep pushing through. And then you're like, well, I'll get it done tomorrow. I'll shoot this big buck tomorrow, and then I'll get sleep and catch up the next day. I think that there are a lot of our listeners and viewers right now in the same place. I am beat, tired. Well, I'll just take a couple days off, and that's not what to do this week. That is not what to do this week.
Oh man, yeah. So you're not going to be just chilling like it's been, because I know it's been a little dormant, know.
Well, you got your mild weather and you got the lockdown, and I think we skipped a phase. And if you're listening right now that you need to hear this, this show is about the lockdown and how I can explain what it is and what it isn't. And it's probably the number one question. It's really easy for people just to go, they're in the lockdown. They're in the lockdown, and that's just what it is. No, they're always in the lockdown. And then this is the time where I watch so many good hunters, dedicated hunters, and then people maybe that are newbies that they've pushed hard through this little period. And then all of a sudden, right when it starts getting good, this morning was frosty outside, and with every click of the clock and every minute that goes past, we get closer to that big buck standing up from the doe that he's been courting out in that thicket to running around like an idiot and actually giving you your opportunity. So I have watched so many people, not to any fault of their own or not to any fault of the physicality of the toll it takes hunting every day, headed back, to PA. The boys from Hunter, they're from PA. They hunted Iowa hard, then hunted Illinois hard, 2 completely different kind of hunts. Illinois was dead, locked, down, if you want to call it that, and Iowa was just fired up and bucks were running everywhere. And then I know everybody's headed back to work this week, and they're kind of like, well, I'll wait till the cameras go off, or I'll wait till it gets a little bit better, or I'll wait till that 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th. And that is just not what Uncle Bubby is predicting. This is probably when I'm at my best, but this is the little bit of a deer craziness that I get into, which is I have to find that 5th and even that 6th gear to push through the next couple days, to find your sanity.
You know what I think you need to get into that 6th
A wake-up call?
I think you do.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Here, who's bringing us the wake-up call, always?
This is Hunting Day Coffee Company. Hunting Day Coffee Company, it gets me up in the morning and gets me rolling every morning. I set the program on my coffee maker, and this beautiful, bold, rich coffee for hunters by hunters is what brings me every morning a wake-up call. So why don't we wake up the Brackett Show with a little hunting day coffee wake-up call?
Let's go.
Wakey, wakey, wakey.
Wake up.
Hey, Chris, this is Kyle. I'm calling from west central Illinois, Hancock County area. My question is about hunting
Just west of
the
us.
second phase of the rut, whether the rumors of killing a mature deer, or your odds of killing a more mature deer in your property are higher during that phase, things that I've heard, and then any advice you would have on targeting a mature deer, being time of day to hunt. Is it still a lunchtime hunt, or is it better in the morning, evening, or whatever? Other tactics, calling, other helpful information or tips you would have on hunting that second phase.
Well, that's going to cover everything today.
When you would guess it would be, like around Thanksgiving time, early December, late November.
That's when your food's
Anything
coming in.
helpful you'd have, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
That's when your food's coming in there at the end. Well, that's a perfect call because that has everything to do with everything. Chris, what's the rut?
Well, I mean, I think you're going to tell me. Hey, honestly,
It's a trick question.
I
Everybody defines it different.
Well, so I'm not, traditionally a hunter, although I'm learning, right? So
Yeah.
my assumption, I'll just tell
Yep.
you what my assumption has
Perfect.
been. So when you talk about the rut, I assume you're talking about like bucks and does getting together, and there's that time of breeding, and they're kind of, the bucks are chasing after does, and so you're seeing
the dominancy.
Yeah.
You're seeing the surrender by the does that she's going to stand because of her, essentially her fertility cycle and all that she'll stand for actual breeding, like dogs.
Yeah, and like we've literally never, you and I have never talked about this specifically. So
Perfect.
But that has been, as I've been thinking about it and you've talked about it, that's kind of been my assumption of what the rut is, and that it happens based on the fact that people are talking about it, we're in the rut now. It happens during this time of year. Although one could argue perhaps that happens throughout the year. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's what it comes down to, each individual person. What information they have gotten from magazines, TV shows, podcasts, even, like what is the rut? Do they have like a biologist standpoint of it, which a biologist standpoint of a rut is from the first time that the first doe of the season comes in your area into estrus. Estrus is when a doe is, they call it an incubation period. What do they call that? When she's going to stand, when a dog is going to stand, when any kind of critter,
Like
a mammal,
when they're in heat or something?
Yes, when they're in heat. Yep. So that estrus is when that animal's in heat. And, there's only a certain period of time. I'm not a biologist, but within like 48 hours, I think is the only time that she stands and actually will let a buck breed her. And then, that's when they're able to make baby deer. And so, does this individual deer, I'm holding up my coffee mug, individualizing something, saying this deer right here, is this deer in heat called the rut for that deer? Like, does each deer have a rut? That is really where the complication of all these different sources of information come in. And then, so when a gentleman calls in, how do you look at that second phase or second cycle, or like, where did he get that from? It gets complicated, no?
Yeah. I mean, especially for someone like me who it's new, like,
You're like, I thought I had it figured out. It's the rut. It's like, well, what, October, November? And you're like, yeah, and December and January, and, down south, sometimes even into March. And in Florida, it's July. And you're like, okay, now I'm really confused.
so is it like weather specific? Is it like area of the country specific?
Happens every year at the same time. It has a lot to do with that moon. Has a lot to do with it doesn't matter how hot it is, because the deer are going to come into estrus at the same time that they always do, depending on the animal. So I like to figure out, because you know me and anybody listening, and if you don't know that I hunt specific properties that have food, security, and I'm able to really pay attention with the cameras and the sightings that I take every day of hunting. I'm able to pay attention to what those does that frequent those certain areas on my property, what they go through on their little ruddy cycle. And every farm is different. So I get lots of questions like this that say, is that second phase better? All right, Chris, what is the number one thing that gets big deer on their feet? Weather. Number one, right? Weather. We talk about it all the time. Coldness, frostiness. This is a giant animal with lots of fat, with lots of body mass, wearing a fur coat that is literally defending things and fighting to its death sometimes. So the first thing is weather. And so when somebody starts talking about, hey, Chris, is the second phase of the rut, that's what this gentleman is asking, better than what? Did he say the first season of the rut or later in the year?
I think he's asking, compared to what we've had so far, is it going to get better?
Okay, that's fair.
I think.
Let's give today a date, and let's rock out with the lockdown and what I think the deer are doing. Today is the 12th, right? The 13th, when this is like hitting the air, depending on it's tonight or tomorrow. The 13th, 14th, and 15th. I have said it for a month. I believe will be the 3 greatest days of this year because of how the lunar full moon system affects deer in a positive way. Now, I don't get into it like Bobby Kendall. We had a discussion this week. I don't get into it like Adam Hayes with the red moon or whatever. All I can tell you is that years and years and years of killing big deer, if I had 5 or 6 big deer that I killed in a year, 80% of them a year and in total were killed the 48 hours before a full moon. When it falls on a period where they've been kind of locked down and the weather's been hot and the powder keg or the pressure in this, vacuum is getting more and more, not pressure, the system gets pressurized, right? Like you can feel when our family units at home are getting anxious and getting very anxiety filled, and the pressure in the room, whether it be at work, building up to a vacation or something or a big meeting, like you can feel that pressure building. And right now the pressure has been building in the deer woods, in these thickets, in where more and more does are coming into heat, which then gets everybody really cantankerous, and the bucks are like fighting over the girls, and the girls are feeling crazy, and the fawns are being kicked away from their mothers. There's a whole lot of hostility in the world, in the deer woods in the world, and that's what to me starts amping up what I call the rut. And so in the first phases really kind of go unnoticed, where you have little younger bucks running all over, and they're feeling they're spreading their wings for the first time. It's the first time they've ever participated in the rut cycle at all, where they can actually, as a mature animal at 1.5 years, breed a doe. Okay, at 1.5 years. So they're participating. They're scraping. They're rubbing. They're sowing their oats, and they're really stupid. They're kind of everywhere. Then you have these secondary animals, the 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, they're the ones that get killed a lot of times. They're the ones that got the nice little 8-point rack or the little basket rack, or, those 3-year-olds can get pretty big looking. And you watch Facebook, you watch the different pages that you belong to in groups on social media, and you go to the taxidermist, and there will be, they'll get a dozen deer in a night or in a 2-day period, and that the rut, if you will, has started because the young stupid deer are running everywhere. And sometimes people are really happy with shooting that caliber of deer. That's not what this show really is about, shooting those smaller caliber of deer. But you really notice from a taxidermist, from a meat processor, or from your trail cameras that the rut is on. About simultaneously as the little guys start running around, you fall into this category of where did the big ones go? Well, what happened is the big boy, the one percenters, the 1% that you've been watching on a trail camera, and so is the other 6 of your neighbors, because there's just not that very many out there. Those deer simultaneously, when all the other little ones are running around chasing and brr, brr, and they're grunting and all this, simultaneously, he scooped up the hot chick. He scooped up the doe running around, and he took her, and they have a simultaneous understanding, because, these are very social animals. They pee on the same scrapes. They touch the same stuff with their glands. We've talked about all this in other episodes. Those babies have made an agreement, spit on their handshake together, blood oath, that the doe and the bigger buck, she actually will hang out and seek him, which goes against nature. Does that make sense? Like, it goes against nature. Normally I guess it goes against what we think happens in the rut, where the bucks go chase the does. The hierarchy in the really, really big mature bucks, the big boys have a simpatico relationship with these first doe groups, where they have been bedding and raising their fawns and hiding from predation. And then these big bucks walk in there and go, everybody cool with me hanging out, me being the one, I'm the dominant one. I look at the way I smell, the way I posture, the way I do everything. And they have this relationship. It's like, are we cool with not leaving this thicket? And we've got water here. We've got green browse here. It's hot. We don't need actual feed. And then, like, if we do go anywhere, we might go somewhere at night, maybe take a little walk around. And they actually court them for what I say roughly to be 5 to 7 days. And a lot of times I'll see that, like that November 2nd or 3rd, I'll watch them kind of stay in a small acre to quarter acre area. And understand that I am explaining the lockdown period in a long way to get to his question by explaining everything that I wanted to today. And this episode is about the phase we're in right now, where we're locked down. How we skipped kind of a phase, which is like the walkabout before this, just kind of didn't happen with the bigger deer. They're fat and sassy right now, and they're locked with these does. And what the lock means is what I'm explaining. And then after that, I'm going to talk about, we might even have to do a second part, because I agree with you, Chris, that we need to get these out to the people probably on the 13th. So they have 2 of these series to listen to, and then we just won't put one out Friday, but both of these needs to be listened to, because by the time that Friday gets here, half of our listeners have just killed the biggest buck of their life, because they've been intently listening. So right now I'm going to go back to that phase. They've essentially have this little house, this little area, as long as they're not affected or pushed out of it by a hunter. They've got this little area that they've created, really a lot around multiflora rows and thickets and switchgrass and a little ditch maybe. The buck and the doe have made an agreement. You're going to fend off the other little annoying bucks, and I'm going to let you breed, and we're going to, we're going to do this. We're going to get through this rut together. And so, kind of like what happened with COVID a little bit with a lot of us and our wives. We're like, we're going to get the food, we're going to stay in the house and
be on lockdown.
Yep, and you're going to see and that's what really happened. And that is what is happening right now on the 12th. And every minute that you hear my voice right now, every minute we're getting closer to that powder keg exploding, okay? And that powder keg exploding is when all of the does, right now there's, let's say, 10% of the does, 15% of the does in heat right now. Pretty soon it's going to be over 50% as every minute clicks by, as these little bucks are chasing around these does right now, around these little bedding area thickets in this lockdown. And then that big buck is going to get off of these, away from these does, get away from this little lockdown area. And that could happen in the middle of the night. That could happen in the middle of the day. And normally he stands up and he goes on his big walkabout to he kind of goes on this big walkabout to assess the property and his area, and that's when you have to kill him. So when this gentleman's asking this question, is the second phase better kind of than the first phase? What do I do in the second phase? Well, to me, the second phase doesn't, I don't look at it in phases. I look at it in, you have on the property where the little bucks will do their thing. The big bucks will lock down a little bit. But as soon as that big buck stands up, individually realize this, that if you have like 6 big bucks in the area, your odds are increased by 6 times to shoot a bigger buck. So don't generalize what we're saying here. The big boy is going to stand up. He's going to take a walkabout. We've got one right now on camera this morning since we got to the studio, a 4.5-year-old deer that clearly has been locked down with a doe. He has either bred that doe or a big one came and took his doe, and he stood up and he's been on, I have 4 cameras on one farm. I should have a lot more. He walked in front of 3 out of the 4 in the last hour, and they're 300 or 400 yards apart. He is on the search right now looking for a doe, and if he was my target, he would have walked by 3 of my stands at least, maybe more. And if I was just there, he dies. So you have this crazy phase where the deer that I'm after, I know he hasn't got killed yet. Like, I haven't heard that he's got killed. I haven't had pictures of him, and I haven't had pictures of him or seen hide nor hair of him on any cameras for 5 days. But I know he's alive, and I know where he's at because he doesn't leave this area. And he is just with these does. When he stands up, he's going to walk and try to find it, and I have to be there. So when is that going to be? Is that going to be in daylight? That is why this full moon coming, and they like to walk during the daylight. This is a big deal for the 13th, 14th, and 15th of November.
Yeah, I know that you've been talking about this for a long time. And I know, like, this episode, we talked before we started filming, like, there's a lot that you're going to get into. And so I want to do that real quick. I've got a fun little thing we're going to do before we get to some more questions and get into more details about this rut, about lockdown, and everything there is to talk about. So here's a question for you, kind of a would you rather. So, you go bow hunting or bow and arrow hunting. But here's my question. If you had to choose, if you were forced to either use just a bow and then you'd have to figure out what to use for an arrow, or just an arrow and no bow, which would you be more likely to be able to kill a deer with? If you just had an arrow and it's got a broadhead or whatever on it, or you have just a bow.
So you're talking about like a spear?
I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but I'm just saying, like, if, let's say you were given the choice, okay, we're going to send you out in the woods, and you can either take your bow or you can take your arrows, which would you rather take, and which would you be more likely to be able to get a deer?
Can I make the other one?
I mean, I think so. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you can take all your other stuff. You could have a knife with you or whatever.
Well, I think that if I took a longbow, it would be easier to make an arrow.
Be easier to fashion an arrow?
I think it would be, I think I would pick a bow because it would be easier to fashion an arrow.
Yeah.
Because there are things like shatter cane, there are straighter little willows, like those babies are sharp. I think you could make an arrow easier than you could make a bow.
Because I know you've talked about some of your arrows being so sharp. Now, granted, if it's an expandable, it's not going to open up unless you've got a lot of force.
If you put it in the right place, like I could do it. Like it gets deeper. I'm sure I can make a fire. I have all my resources, but I don't have both of them. If I forgot one at home and I took a longbow and I was on this adventure, I could make an arrow faster and better than I can make a bow because I couldn't, do all the stuff I needed to the Osage and carve it out and make the sinew. I'd have to kill something to make the string out of the sinew. So there's more components to the bow. So I would take the bow. You couldn't
throw or stab with an arrow very easily.
Well, you could take a really long an atlatl.
Yeah.
Have you heard of an atlatl?
I have not.
Oh, dude, you got to look up atlatl.
Okay.
Atalat, sometimes they call it, but an atlatl is it's a long arrow.
Okay.
Normally 5 to 6 feet, and then you can fashion a piece of wood that you hold in your hand that looks like a something that you would, put like a paper airplane in, and you would use it to. It's almost like a paddle, but it's short. It's narrower, and you put you hold at the fingertips the arrow, and at the back, normally about 1.5 to 2 foot long, the back of that holds the nock of this ridiculously long 5 to 6 foot arrow, and it looks like a giant arrow, and you hold it and you step forward throwing it like a javelin, and the physics and kinetic energy transferred through the long arrow, through the little the whipping, kind of like throwing a baseball. It's that snap of the wrist. It's snapping that wooden and I think it's got a name for the actual wooden part, but it's an adalat. And you throw it and it propels it, and it's like the greatest force. It's kind of like how David defeated Goliath with the sling. Yeah. It's kind of a little sling, but it's wooden, and then it throws that long dude. And it goes through the air. That's how they killed buffaloes.
Okay. So the long story short is you'd be successful either way.
I got it.
You got it.
As long as I could make an arrow. Either way, I got it. But I would rather have a bow because I could make arrows.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, listeners, viewers, what do you think? What would you prefer? You can leave a little message, but yeah, I know we're going to get into it now. So here, let me get you another question.
Hey, Chris, how's it going? Donnie here. I got a question for you. So right now it's November the 8th, and, you know, a lot of people say lockdown. A lot of people say, I don't really know. I mean, I just know you sit in the woods and you get out there and you see what happens. Right now in my area, they are fighting and they're seeking. I rattle the buck in. But I noticed that these deer, every year, I got a new piece of property, they are rutting in what I call a bowl. Now, it's deep. It's kind of surrounded by hills, and it's a deep pocket. So it's lower than the areas that I'm hunting. And so for 2 years, they have rutted in that spot. And then yesterday, it was on fire. You know, November the 7th, I'm in West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky. I'm in this tri-state area. And it was light, misty rain. And it was on fire. Like, my cameras blew up. I mean, I could have killed any deer I wanted that day. All my target bucks showed up. But then today, it's different. You know, it's like, it's not rainy here. It's still kind of cool, but it's totally different today. So could you answer that question for me? The rain, the bowl, and where they're rutting at. And I just wanted to see if you'd help me out with that. I appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good day.
So what you're experiencing is the thing that keeps us coming back. It's like pulling the lot. You know, it's like pulling the handle on a slot machine. You never know what those days are going to combine. Whether it be the frost, whether it be the moisture, whether it be, you know, the time of year. And it's why I say be the trail camera, because like clearly he wasn't there hunting yesterday. He was watching his trail cameras and watching everything maybe from a distance. A couple different ways to answer kind of this question. The first question that we had before Donnie's was the second phase of the rut. The easy answer to the second phase of the rut is you have to be there when the big buck stands up and then does a big circle to find another doe. That's my answer for that. You're going to be praying for cold weather to trump that. Now, to trump everything else, cold weather is going to keep them on their feet longer, is going to keep that search going a little bit more. The more humidity in the air, which is what Donnie's kind of talking about, is a big deal. They can kind of taste the air. Right now they're in a phase where they're tasting the air, and it's going to take you far in having a buck travel longer, which giving you a higher opportunity. The gentleman that called earlier was also talking about Thanksgiving to December. Thanksgiving, December, if we get the colder weather, is going to turn these deer around food. Now, what's the food going to do? Well, the bucks are not going to eat. Just mark this in your brain and say, a buck does not have to eat till December 5th to 7th. Just period. But if we get the colder weather, the fawns and the does will feed on your standing crops or your food plots, and that's when you're going to watch them, and you're going to watch these does as they get bred get out of these thickets and go to these food sources and go back and forth. Well, all congregating on these food right now. Up till now, you have skipped a phase where these doe and these bucks have not fed at all. So you're not getting as much transfer and as much movement out of the mature bucks or even out of your bucks in your farm at all, because the does aren't traveling from the bedding to the food right now because they don't have to eat. They're just eating browse and staying alive. So these bucks haven't had to move anywhere to find the trails that the does are traveled. They're all balled up in these little, what I call, that we're talking to Donnie about, sex bowls. And what I mean is that is that's a professional term, Chris.
Yeah,
the sex
it sounds
bowl.
like it. Yeah.
And that is an area that, one, the does feel safe, and the other thing is that a buck can defend it, right? So, he has this prize situation that he's been waiting all year to breed this doe. Animalistic, testosterone, whatever. He can lock her down in what we refer to as the sex bowl, and that's where this breeding is going to be taking place, where he can lock her into that and he can defend, his prize possession right there, and he can defend that. And you'll watch the younger bucks go in and out of that area. And a lot of people just went, "Oh, I thought I was the only one that saw that." But no, Donnie, you're not alone. We have those on the consulting trail that are able to be identified by not only the observance of what the landowner tells us is happening, but we have them on our farms that when that happens, we are just downwind of that, sitting as close as we can, and we will normally, he'll lose a doe, he'll lose her because like another buck came in and poked her with her antlers and she jumped up and she went off to the races, or she got a little too pressured and she left, and that buck feels like he missed his opportunity, so he circles downwind. And when he circles downwind of that sex bowl is that's when you kill him. So find that predominant wind out of that situation, and you just hunt it on the downwind as close as you can get to. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll sneak in that next morning extra early, and I'll try to get as tight as that as I can, and you'll be in the buck action no matter what. I think what Donnie's referring to, the part that he noticed and why he asked the question the way he did, was he was talking about the moisture in the air being high misting and high water vapor content in the air, okay? What I refer to those days as a day that she's in estrus and she smells really good to these bucks. She's got him really wound up, like the wife with perfume on, and she's dressed up, and it's going to be a good night going out to dinner, and you're going to get lucky. But she's smelling real good. The air is really heavy. Normally when you have a misty day, that water vapor is heavy in the air, but it also, if you've ever added water to something that, how can I, if you take a concentrate, right? So like, let's say that it's really her pheromones. Her whole body smells different. Every gland and every part of her whole body. It's not necessarily the pee. It's the glandular smell of her whole body changing. It's the pheromones. Those pheromones, in a really dry day or in a really dry climate, those pheromones don't really go far because our air is really thin, okay? But when we have more air, more particles in our air, higher humidity, that gets really permeating into the air and holding in each little bit of that water molecule. It's kind of why you smell rain.
Yeah, it's like when it rains and then someone's burning leaves and you can smell it.
You smell it forever.
Yeah, for miles. Yeah.
But when it's a high pressure system, Normally, when it's raining, it's a low pressure, so everything's really low to the ground, and the burning leaves smell and the dough smell is just hanging in the air, which is causing these bucks to get in a frenzy. Those high pressure days, it's kind of one of the reasons you see the bucks have to go further distances and not just be in that bowl. They have to go, and because they're trying to Pokemon Go, smell or find across the world these smells and what they're looking for. They have to go further. That's really the explanation that you're finding. The best strategy for that is to have the most patience, and you're going to have to strike while the iron's hot. Like when you see that happening, let's say you're at home and you're seeing that happen on the trail cameras. That means do not pass go, do not collect $200, go to the woods and get in the woods. Those are the days it happens. Those are the days that I talk about when everybody goes like, hey Chris, when do you do all day sits? I don't go out with the intention of going, I'm going to sit all day. Now I might the 13th, 14th, and 15th, but I will probably go out late in the morning and sit the rest of the day and do one sit rather than dark to dark. Like that'll just drive a man insane. So I don't go out in the morning hunts wanting to stay all day. I'll take just enough snacks in my pocket, maybe a water bottle, and if I have to survive on that, I have to survive on that. Hopefully that day I get the deer killed that I'm after. But normally what happens is you get in the morning, it becomes one of those mornings where that happens in that sex bowl or that happens in that breeding situation. That is, to me, what the rut is. When that rut day happens, that's the day you just can't get down. Sometimes you got to get closer, even if you have to move your stand in the middle of the day. Like that's the day. Just creep in on the ground, sit next to a tree, get closer to that action, and you're going to be able to capitalize.
You know, you keep saying sex bowl and and you were describing it. And honestly, what I kept thinking of was like Gladiator and the Coliseum. So it's like Gladiator 3 sex bowl.
That's it.
The deer themed Gladiator movie that'll come out in 2025. But
yeah, I mean, if we had a graphic of some sort, that's exactly what it is. There is a lot of those younger bucks. This is their first participant. They're the people in the crowd, the little bucks. Yeah. You know, those. Yeah. They're over there like downwind and like fighting with each other going, we're in the party. And then you kind of got the 2-year-olds are like, man, does she have any friends? And then like the 3-year-olds are around there going like, boy, if he's looking the other way, I'm going to sneak in there real quick and, you know, give her a wink,
are you like the emperor or like what role are you playing in all this?
I'm married. I just wait for my doe to come home.
Oh no! No, but I'm not calling you a deer. I'm saying you as the hunter.
Okay.
I mean, right? Like you're probably like kind of overseeing all of this, right? And then you're going to take out whatever you want to take out.
Well,
although you're not interfering with this whole sex bowl situation.
This is a good question. What I am is outside the gates to the. I'm outside the gate to where, you know, if the slaves that are fighting or the best of the best are fighting, Maximus Decimus Aurelius is fighting, right?
Yes.
And they're going to sneak him out the back entrance, right? And take him, you know, where he's going to keep training. I'm going to steal him
when they take him out.
When you take him out.
Yeah.
So I'm not I'm not in the game. I'm in the sneakiest position that when they take him out, I'm gonna steal him, and now he's gonna work for me.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to find the greatest gladiator in that thing. Right. The greatest gladiator that is fighting in that. I want him as a trophy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so that buck that wins all the battles, I'm waiting for him to slip up. So when he's done with his battle, I'll be sitting in that same tree with that same perfect wind, and I'm going to be patient. Now, there are other people, and this is a great point. There are other people that come in, like let's take Jared from Hunter Podcast. Jared is one that's going to take his Lone Wolf custom tree stand and 4 sticks and roll into the Coliseum, and he's going to go right into the sex bowl and try to get that deer killed in 3 or 4 days, because that's all he has to hunt, because he has 4 or 5 states, and his home state is PA. He's
I
only
feel like
here
we
for
need
a
to
week.
snip that little audio clip there where you said Jared from Hunter Podcast is going to go right into the sex bowl.
Yeah, he's going to go in the sex ball. And he's a young buck, right? Like,
Oh, there you go.
he's always pumping iron. You know, he's got the big muscles. Like, he's in his prime. He's going to go right in there and hunt. But realize that if he's either going to go in and kill that big buck, or he is going to, or he's going to blow it up. But he knows he's going to come back and get another opportunity. And me, I can hunt every day. I've set my life up that way, and I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait where I know as soon as this big buck I'm after gets off of his doe, he's going to frequent the sleazy bars, and I'm going to be waiting to capitalize, take them.
All right. Speaking of the Hunter Podcast, boys, here we go.
What's up, dude? This is Jared and Jeremy from the Hunter Podcast. Yo! And we're heading home from Iowa and Illinois. And as you know, we crushed some good deer out in Iowa, and then rounded it off with kind of a slow go there in Illinois. It seemed like they were pretty locked down for a few days. Yeah, man, we ended up seeing a really good buck this morning on our farm, but
Crazy horse, I
obviously
think.
paired up with a doe. So I guess maybe tell your viewers what do you think about the stage of the rut we're in right now around this lockdown, and we'll see you in the next circle back out to Illinois here in a couple weeks. All right, buddy. See ya.
Boy, they're going to be watching their cameras. I told them they were on their way home from PA yesterday, or to PA. And I said, don't look at your cameras the next 24 hours because the weather's changing just a little bit, just a little crispy when I woke up this morning. Last night, I saw the best action that I had seen in 4 or 5 days. I literally went from my hopes being the highest on kind of that front side of the rut. Like, every year I feel like November 1, 2, 3. I talk about that in the other pods. 1, 2, 3. For some reason, they're fire. They're awesome. And I passed up all kinds of good deer. Actually, I have one clip for us, Chris, that I'm going to play right now. I'm going to describe this.
Yeah.
I went to the other side of my farm. I got in my stand for an east wind. I have one stand for an east wind on my farm. And I went there, and exactly typical what happened. A 3-year-old super mega baby giant is walking around chasing a doe, and this is typical rutting behavior. If you're listening right now, go to YouTube. You can watch this clip. It's one clip. The doe comes down to the creek. She crosses the creek. She jumps over my fence. This fence is, I own both sides of it, just an old fence. She stops, and she just stays there for a second, and here comes the 3-year-old off the ridge, following her exact footprints. And this is kind of that seeking phase where she's not ready yet, but he's just seeking her. The big boys are locked down in a brush pile somewhere, but he is on his feet. He doesn't really know what to do, and he's just going to get these does worked up until the big boys come steal her. That essentially is what happened. He comes off the hill. He's been running quite a while. He gets a drink out of the puddle, refuels his body, refuels his energy, and then he goes up, jumps the fence right behind her, and off to the neighbors. And he actually, shout out to my neighbors, very disciplined hunters with their kids, would have been their first buck. This buck came by, and then Nick and his son, and then Aspen, she even passed him at 15 yards. Like, for a woman hunter, just for a hunter period, but to be a young lady, woman hunter, smart, intelligent, wants a mature animal, she passes this buck at 15 yards. Because about 15 minutes later, after I said, hey, the superstar 3-year-old's headed to you, Nick, and he's like, yep, he's headed back to you. And here he come off the hill and then went over, and I watched him walk, and then Aspen's like, hey, I just passed him at 15 yards. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God. He's going to be something really, really cool. That's one of those things where not every time are your neighbors going to shoot something where people go like, I got to shoot him, otherwise my neighbors are going to. This is a case in point that this would have been the younger kid. I think he's 12 or 13, would have been his first bow buck, and passes a 145 super mega giant 3-year-old. And then the daughter that killed one of the big ones 2 years ago, she's a super hunter, and she's shout out to them. She films them, and he passes them at like 15 yards. So
Crazy.
Super cool footage, super cool encounter. So that's the kind of the phase we went through. To circle back to the point of real deal is I went to other edge of my property with the wind in my face, and every deer walked in front of me, and I saw all kinds of bucks that morning. And you have all these bucks just kind of walking through the woods doing this tending thing where they're on these does. And I think a lot of times people say, I'm not seeing the big boys. But what they really are experiencing is they are experiencing the rut. I just don't think that most people want to hear the truth about how many really, really mature, big, like this antler here, like big 5-year-old plus animals are in the world. I don't think people understand the truth about that. There are not very many of them. Like you going and sitting there. I mean, picture this. This is on 350 to 400 acres of property. 350 acres. That's a lot in Illinois. You had one 3.5-year-old 145-inch deer with kickers and stickers and non-typical and good mass and good bases. We've shown them on the show before, rubbing down below me. I've passed him 20 times. I've chosen to not shoot him. He walked by 3 hunters one morning in 30 minutes with a bow, in bow range, perfect shots, and all of us didn't shoot him. That does not happen very often. Why did we pass him? Right? I know why I did. I make rules for myself that I'm only going to shoot 5-year-old or older deer on my farms or on my leases. But there is something really spectacular about saying to yourself, I had the opportunity to shoot this deer. If I would have shot him, the game ends right there. What would have made me shoot him? Is it social status? Is it I got my buck this year? But you got to, when there's a 20-year-old girl sitting, that you wouldn't think is a great hunter like that, she's sitting 300 yards away from me, and this buck leaves my sanctuary and my property that has all the switchgrass and all the food in the world and walks 300 yards straight to her, and she lets him walk. There's a lot of grown men that kind of got to go, I would never let that deer walk. Well, she is not ready to have her experience over. Like, not ready to fill that tag or have that experience. She wants to see a big mature deer with, all that entails, body size, maturity, facial features, bigger antlers. Like she wants something that she has put her brain and her mind and her hunting status to it. And that's so cool to me. And is that the evolution of a bow hunter? Absolutely. Is that something we should all ask ourselves? Is that something that, that we should, that we should kind of analyze for ourselves? The same thing happened yesterday. I'm doing a live on Facebook on my channel, and here comes on my page, and I'm doing a live about the lockdown, and here comes a 4-year-old, walks in. I could kill him. He walks down behind me. I snort wheeze him to get rid of him. And here's this deer. And I can go out any day and experience this rut, this chasing, this tending. And there's so many people that say, like, I don't see that, or what was it? Donnie says that he had the sex bowl there where the breeding's happening, the breeding hole where all the bucks are up. I want you to picture that if you have one of those breeding holes, those coliseums where all this is happening on 300 acres, that would only probably take up the size of a house or a really big barn. Like that's not even a quarter acre. So if you think of 1/4 acre holding 80% of the population of animals that are in the rut, that leaves a lot of acreage left on 350 acres that Nick and Aspen and myself are hunting, that we don't see the deer, that they're not doing anything. Like, does that make sense? Like, how do you explain that, like layman's terms, that you're taking from this?
Yeah, well, it's not that the deer are still there, is what I'm saying. Like, It's just like there's, especially on a property that big, there's so much land, like you might not be seeing them, but that doesn't mean they're not there. And
Texas football stadium. Friday night, the town's nowhere to be found. They're all at the stadium.
Sure.
Fair, right? I think we've all watched Friday Night Lights. Everybody's at the stadium, and then so take that as second phase of the rut to our first answer, our first question, and then Jeremy and Jared. Let's take that football stadium. Everybody's there. The Warriors are on the field. The prize is the dough, right? And everybody's there or in and around that situation. When does that next phase happen? It might go into overtime, right? It might go into overtime. It may last for longer than expected. And so that's why it's really hard to answer questions. I really think right now, if you picture it right now, Friday Night Lights, Friday night football, high school football in Texas is what's happening on these properties because the weather is very chill. And I don't mean cold chilly. I mean very, very stale. 60 degrees, 55 degrees. The winds are still going east and west and back and forth. And you have nobody in a hurry to go anywhere because it's not like this cold system's coming. It's not like this freezing cold's happening. You're having more of like, there's all these like words like the trickle rut is happening. What's really happening is everybody's at this Coliseum. Everybody's at this Coliseum. Everybody's at this Coliseum. All the football games are happening in very small locations on hundreds of acres, and all the deer are there. Slowly, they get tired of being at the football game. They get tired of being at the Rut Coliseum, and people start to leave. These bucks get restless, and so that you start seeing the littler bucks kind of leave again, and you start seeing the 3 and 4 year olds. That's all of a sudden when the taxidermist starts filling up with heads that the 3 and 4 year olds die like crazy because a guy has hunted like me for the last 7 days straight, or like Jeremy and Jared, or like Donnie, or whoever it is. Like we've hunted 5 to 7 days, and you're to the boiling point where you're like, I'm just going to kill a buck now. There's no big ones for me to kill. I'm just going to kill one. So 4-year-old rolls in, he shoots it, he gets to mount a deer, he gets to say, I got my buck, but he didn't stick to his plan, which was monster deer, pass up everything under. He's good enough for me. No, don't let him be good enough for you. Keep that bar set high and like see that out, man. Don't just tag one because it fills the bloodlust that you feel like, well, we kind of go through a phase, man, as a big buck hunter, that when we put 5, hard days of hunting in, we feel like we've done something and that we need a reward. We do it with food all the time. Cartoons make it look a lot easier to dig a hole in the yard, like 6 foot deep.
Oh man, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That is hard.
In a movie, it's like well, let's just dig a hole here.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's a pretty big hole. That would take us at full body mass, hours, if not days, and they do it in minutes on movies and cartoons. It's the same kind of thing. Like to get that really big deer, I challenge you to go like, if you have one on camera and if it's still alive. Not if you're dreaming that one shows up, because most of the time they don't show up unless you have a lot of food later in the season. But if you have one that is on the property and is alive, don't settle for anything less. Give yourself the opportunity to do the work you put in. But if you spend 5 minutes or 50 minutes, Chris, digging that hole and you're like, oh, I didn't get very far, this is good enough, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do deer hunting. We go, I've hunted 5 days, morning and evening. My wife wants me home. My vacation is coming to an end. I'm just going to shoot something and tag it. And to me, man, that is just not my mentality. And that is a fool's mentality. In my opinion, a fool's mentality that someone just wants to settle. But I also get it like, well, I'm not going to be able to hunt the rest of the year. I'm going to shoot one. You don't have to shoot one. I challenge you that you don't have to. But that is the big buck growing person that I want that to happen. And I want somebody to see in the colors that I see in. And what I mean by that is like, I want somebody to experience that once in their life. That changes a man. That changes a woman. Aspen is somebody, my neighbor that passed that at 20 years old. She has shot a big mature deer after and passing bucks like this. And she's able to go, I'm cool if I don't kill a buck, but I'm going to kill a big mature. I don't just have to shoot one to say, well, when I was 20, I just filled it on a nice little 8-pointer or whatever. If you want hunting to be great again, if you want big bucks to be great again, you have to have this mentality that just says like, I don't need to shoot a deer just to shoot one. You know what? You know what would really help? Go ahead and shoot some mature does, get that bloodlust out of there, leave the little boys alone. Let them grow up to play in the Coliseum one day, and what these guys are seeing, leaving Illinois and getting their butt kicked is they have a unique opportunity. It's not like they got their butt kicked. They have a longer play. Like they have a plan that they put in place, just like my clients. They're not my clients, but just like my clients, they have a long-term thing, which includes several acres of soybeans, corn, brassicas that we put in, clovers that we have. They have a long-term play for food and then cover. Last year they came into their farm, which is like CRP and really tall grasses, if you don't know what that means. And their farm got bigger this year because last year when they rolled in, all their grasses were mowed and the deer didn't have anywhere to hide. So they hunted like 3 deer. They hunted like 3 days and killed 3 big bucks. And because the bucks didn't have very many places to hide, they were really running small corridors. This year, everything's spread out and there's lots of food. So in this time of the year, when they rolled into town, all the bucks are bedded with does in this tall grass doing the Coliseum lockdown thing. And are they really locked down, or are they, just not ready to play the game yet because the does are dictating how the game's played because they're not coming there. Once the does come into 60% estrus and run all over, now all of a sudden it's a frenzy and it's a craziness, and bucks, can trade properties and chase does for miles. But right now they're just in that beginning phase where the buck's like, hey, lady, if you stand up and run, I'll chase you. And she's like, it's 60 degrees, Bubba. I don't care what you do. Like, let's just chill here and then and see what happens. And I think that is really where the phase that we're at is that you can go run the deer all over your farm and you'll bump deer all over your farm that are just kind of bedded down waiting to do deer things. But we skipped over a phase, which would be the phase of like the cruise around and take an itinerary. These bucks just kind of locked with these girls. And nobody has to go to the grocery store because nobody has to feed. It's not cold enough. They haven't expended the energy. And I think you're going to see the 13th, 14th, and 15th with this zombie full moon 3 days before the full moon. Somewhere in there, you're going to have these really, really big, super mega monsters walk around in the middle of the day, or walk around in daylight, period. Now, everybody's going to be like, Chris, when would you hunt? Well, I would recommend keeping your sanity. So if you can hunt all day for 3 days from dark to dark, hopefully you pick the right spot that's normal, that a big buck wants to be in. An inside corner, an outside corner, or like a rut funnel kind of thing where they like to pick this main trail when they're traveling from point A to point B, from Coliseum to Coliseum. And then just sit for 3 days from dark till dark. Play the wind a little bit, but make sure you're sitting from dark to dark. Me personally, here's what's going to happen for me. I am going to key in and never stray from the way I hunted from October 1 till now. I will continue to hunt these inside corners that are close to these little coliseums, but I will not be afraid to change stands in the middle of the day in this location. You will see me get up early in the morning, get my coffee on, get my wake-up call with my hunting day coffee, go sit in a stand till about 11 o'clock in the morning. I'll probably get down. I will head to another stand to refresh my brain, maybe a blind, and I will chill there for a couple hours, maybe even set out the evening. But I will freshen up, but stay in the same location as I'm hunting one particular buck. I'm not going to leave his area. I will be close proximity there. And I will be out in the woods about 80% of daylight on the 13th, 14th, and 15th till he's gone. And I will push all my chips to that 13th, 14th, 15th. And that's why we're doing a two-parter today, because I want to talk about what that full moon looks like and answer some more questions here in a little bit. But we need to get this out. One, what they're doing with the lockdown and how to kind of look at it. And then And when Jeremy and them left, they had Crazy Horse, their big buck, in the grass 100 yards with a doe and just wouldn't leave her. And they just literally said, well, we better get home, regroup, let these bucks get off a lockdown and start cruising for that next or that third or that fourth doe. And if that correlates with phase with you, we may have just unlocked that. Like if somebody says second phase, what they should kind of mean is like second doe. Because they're locked with maybe one doe, and they're like, well, that second phase of the rut is like, well, he's getting on another doe, and you're trying to wait. A lot of people consider the rut that time period when he's maybe on his third doe. Like they don't breed 50 does in a year; they breed like 3 or 4 in those 2-week, 3-week period. And really, what that comes down to is a big buck will stand up, walk around, find another doe, breed her. That may be second phase for some people. What we're really looking for, if people are wanting like the deer rave party, that comes in when about 60% of the does are in at the same time, and you get cold weather and you get a full moon. That may happen the 14th and the 15th.
Okay, man. I know we'll be talking about more of that. Like you said, we're making this an extra special 2 episodes back to back. If people are interested in asking you questions, they can call the landline, which is 309-761-5263. They can also visit brackettshow.com to find out more information and also to see all these episodes. Chris, obviously we're talking about hunting. That's the majority of what we've been talking about throughout all these episodes. But outside of the fall, there's a lot of other stuff that you're doing throughout the rest of the year, including consulting.
Yeah, getting ready for fall.
Yeah, everything
you're either in the fall.
Everything
or
leads to the fall for sure.
Right.
But there's work to get done during the rest of the year, and part of the way you can help people to make sure that their fall is amazing is by consulting with them. And so I had a quick call that I wanted to play for you. A question talking about consulting.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, Jason, I'm calling from Michigan. Chris, totally excited about this new venture you guys are doing, so much so that I've got a deposit out for a consult here in the spring.
Oh, awesome.
I guess my question is, through this process, could you talk the people through the process how this works and what happens step by step after you get the deposit, you lock in your date, how this all works, and what one could expect out of the consult when you come out. Again, man, fired up. Can't wait. Had a great season so far. Do a lot of work on my land, but I just want to take it to the next level. Look forward to working with you, brother. The new podcast is great, Chris. Appreciate all you guys are doing. Hope to hear from you soon. God bless. Keep killing it, man.
Oh, excited to get to his property. It's not a huge property, but it's one that we're going to fine tune and tweak. And so when he called the other day, or when we started talking, normally what happens is they go to the Brackett show, they fill out this thing. What is it? What do you have on there?
Yeah, there's just a form. You can ask kind of your questions and stuff, but like it's basically just to be able to reach out.
Yes.
Then we can make sure to set up a time for you guys to talk.
It's a way for them to get their information to me.
Yep.
But you have formulated like a plan they get in. So what happens is normally somebody will be like, hey, I'm inquiring on a consult. There's a couple ways. One, they can do like an online consult that is like $350 an hour. That is just one where I pick the middle of the day, or hopefully I'm tagged out soon. And from now until I do these year round, where somebody can say, hey, I want an online consult. This is the number one question. How many hours do you think I need? Well, normally they start with 1 hour, and in that hour, I'll talk to them and they'll go, "Ooh, I really love this. I wanted to sample this and I want to do another hour." So we just add on another hour and pay through, digital currency or whatever it is, or send a check or whatever. Like that's the easy part. All you need is a computer or a phone that has Skype on it. I use Skype, and then I go on to Onyx Maps. I hope to use like Forge, Spartan Forge in the future. Hopefully some of these other companies I'll work with. And we go on my computer in my office, and I walk through the topography. I change the map around. I do my drawing. I look at your predominant wind. I look at everywhere from Texas I've done Texas all the way up to Canada. We look at the topography. You're able to show me where your stands are. You ahead of time before the meeting, let's say 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, and don't ever go by any of the times that are there. We first start with just book a consult. We'll figure out, get a deposit down. We'll figure out when a good time is to share screen, sit down, map out your property. You can gather videos from your phone and pictures of deer and pictures of what you want to do. And I walk through and we share pictures because I can share your screen and you can share, and I can share my screen, and we can draw on each other's screens. And we just have a great time spitballing and going through information and all this stuff that you would ever want to ask somebody like me that says like, "Hey, am I making the right decision here? Me sitting on this food plot, is this the right decision? Here's what it looks like from the stand," and they can send me the video, phone, they can send it to me computer. That is the first way to do it, is like an online thing. Some people have already done their research and they've been like, okay, Don Higgins, Whitetail Property, Whitetail Group, or Jeff Sturgis, or Whitetail Edge, or there's a lot of people that do consulting, but I don't believe that I am in competition with anyone. I am somebody that takes what's out there in front and what the land gives me, and I am going to use on the bare minimum what you need to do to beat these deer and do to your property. A lot of times that the first glimpse I'll give you is how you can do it with minimum money and a minimum like payload, like with the minimum equipment that you need to do your property. Then I let the customer tell me, well, hey, I can get a skid steer. Oh, cool. Hey, I would like to look at how my timber gets bought, and I would like to take out some big walnuts and oak trees, and I'd clear this food plot. Like, I let them take me as far as they want. I'm not going to go there and say, well, you need to put up $30,000 worth of fence and leave these openings like Don does, right? Or I'm not going to go in like Bobby Kendall is a timber specific guy that's going to go into and develop a property and going to move around treetops and make these things. And he has his own strategy. Most of my guys are somehow kind of purists like myself, which is like, I don't use fences. I'm going to use what my land has for me, and I'm going to beat those deer on that level for me. But if you say, I want to trick them or I want to hinge cut these down so they have to go around, that's good for me. But my style is very pure. Like, I like to leave my place, miscanthus and switchgrass and manicure and architecture, what you have on your canvas, rather than manipulate that canvas into something that is like super geeked out. Mine is really beautiful and flowy, and that's how I kind of keep my stuff. I don't mind if somebody wants to really put the odds in their favor by really manipulating the land. I just don't do that on my personal stuff. My personal stuff is, where do you want a pond? Let's plant corn, beans, alfalfa, clover, and I'm going to teach you down to the nth degree of how to grow them. And And way that really works is that somebody will put down $1,000 deposit, and that price is anywhere from between $5,500 to $7,500, depending on how far it is away from Central Illinois and how many travel days and how big the property is, and then like what level. I don't just have a standard, hey, this is 10 grand or this is 5 grand or this is whatever. If a guy calls me up and he's in Illinois and I've just got one day there, boots on the ground, it may be close to my farm or maybe close to somewhere else, and it may be $3,800. But what I do is I book that ahead of time. Just like with Jason. We book that ahead of time. He sends his deposit. He's on the books. I only take X amount of number a year. I go there. I spend a day, sometimes two, because I want to, and we go over everything. We have already had a head-to-head online consult that's included in the price ahead of that time, and then we kind of go over everything, so I get to do my weird processing in my brain before I get there. So I've already memorized the property. Then once I get the property, I have already kind of went through how I'm going to walk through this property and how I'm going to help and how we're going to access using the predominant winds and things like that. It also comes down to what that person really wants to see in success. I have a lot of guys that just want to shoot 4-year-old deer and 3 of them a year with him and his 2 sons, let's say. Other people are like, I want to kill and grow the biggest whitetail on the planet. I want to grow the biggest buck on the planet and kill the biggest buck on my property, and how do I hold for that? And then so we go over like how many management deer we think this will hold, or are you planting corn? Are you planting corn successfully and is at highest yield? Do you need to put up an electric fence? Do you need to put up beans, and what your soil needs to do? And so we go over real hard strategies of what that person has on his or her property that is their goal. Some people just want to shoot 2 and 3-year-olds. That's okay. And we go over, like, I look at them straight in dead in their eyes and go, listen, if your job is to shoot a 4 or 5-year-old deer, that's the easiest, if that's your expectations, that's the easiest thing for me to get you to be able to accomplish. So easy. But what do you see, Chris, as the client? Do you see yourself in the middle of October over a green plot, and watching him walk out like it's TV show stuff and like so beautiful in that time of year? Or are you a guy that wants to, wait till the end of the year and have it be a slave to their stomach, where they're walking out of the brush and coming in 50 at a time, waiting for that big buck to eat those standing beans? I'm going to set your farm up to where we have all 3 of those options, but with plan A is middle of October, plan B is November 1 through the 3rd. This is where your Coliseum deer sex hole is. Like this is where you're going to hunt. And so we set that up for different phases, and that we're going to use my kind of way that I go about it, which is I'm still hunting the same stand from October 1 till now. And I'm passing big bucks every other hunt, and I know it's a matter of time before I kill them. And I'm gonna hunt there on that deer, and I have to get used to what I'm looking at on that spot to shoot that deer. But if I want to freshen it up, I can go to the other side of the farm and how we pressure this side of the farm, then how we pressure this side of the farm, and then how when we get this wind we can go down the middle, and we're only going to do that twice a year. And all of this is explained while I'm on boots on the ground on your farm. And then that evening at dinner or whatever that is, then I head back home, and I'll spend a day or 2 in the office coming up with some type of plan, putting together what should be new, this buck Bible. In the past, I've just done a digital platform where I'm your coach all year. Right now, I have clients freaking out. They've hunted, They've hunted, they haven't had their big bucks, and I'm like, just relax. Rogers, one of my friends, actually, he essentially got a consult because he bought a property and I was his agent, or I was his broker. So I set his farm up, and he goes back home yesterday, and all of a sudden, boom, the biggest deer of his life shows up on his camera. And that deer now has food and has switchgrass and has everything. That deer's not leaving. He will have the opportunity to kill that deer in the next 3 weeks. No doubt in my mind. As soon as he comes back, that deer's not leaving. The trap has worked. We've got him. He's not leaving. And then he'll keep continuing to get bigger bucks and generationally holding them. So we're coming up with a pattern for year 1, year 3, a plan for year 5, a year plan 10. I got people like my friend Brandon that's like, dude, you got to come down here and do a refresher every year. Let's make this place better. So a lot of my clients go, I've had so much success. I just come back next year. We'll do again. And that's kind of how that works. And then, going into the spring, I give you this whole mapping system and this whole coaching system. And for 12 months, I'm your coach. And you just have this coach on, hey, do you remember the tree by the old barn? And I'm like, oh yeah, yep, I got it. And my photographic memory, and if not, I look back at the map and we outsmart those deer and we kill them. And that is the console in a nutshell of like, imagine me being your coach throughout the year and memorizing your place and then setting it up. And a lot of times it comes down to like, well, you have all this stuff for me to plant and all this grasses. And I'm like, relax. Like somebody like Brad, where he's got a big farm. We did a giant overhaul and extreme whitetail food plotting out of Wisconsin, I think, came in and did everything. So I'll just coordinate with that guy. I'll look over the price and make sure it's good. And those guys will roll in and do all 25 acre, overhaul and get it one and done in the first year. And I don't have to do the work, but I can help correlate the execution of the plan with the local guy that's putting in the stuff. So essentially they're hiring me to be on a team, just like any kind of consult.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. And so like, if someone's watching or listening and they're thinking about it, the difference between like this show is great to provide a lot of information to a lot of different people. But with your consults, you're able to talk about a specific piece of property, about specific
and a deer.
Yeah. And specific goals that they have and like
a cabin, a pond, what kind of fish, like weird stuff.
Yeah. And not only are they going to get that, but then there's also the comfort of knowing like, okay, we worked a plan. It's gonna work out. And so like you were talking about someone who might be freaking out as we've had this weird year.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do I do? What do I expect? They can have comfort in knowing like it's going to work out because you've already put together a plan that's specific for them that's going to work. So,
well, I got one saying, and Kirk reminds it all the time. He said, the hardest thing for a PA boy that grew up just wanting his dream to kill a big buck, it's so hard for him every year after he kills, 150 and 160s and even booners, and just has a fun year that seems to be so easy on such a hard year. He goes, I can't believe that the one thing that you always said comes true, which is they will not win.
Yeah.
He's like, it's so hard for my PA brain to think we're going to kill this 160 and be like, oh yeah, he's not going to win. He's on your property now. He's not going to. We will beat him. And that's the guarantee. It's like as close to a guarantee as you can get is like, what do you mean they won't win? I'm like, dude, if you follow this plan, this deer will not beat you. Like there is not a person that listens to this that goes, Chris has one more tag. He's not going to fill it, right? Like he's going to stay on one of these big deer who he wants to have an encounter with. And he's going to stay on them till he gets that done. And it's not because I'm so great. It's because my farms are set up so well that those odds are just stacking in my favor. Every day that another day goes by, it's getting closer for me dropping the hammer on him because they're set up perfect. And they haven't even started in on my food. And I got 16 acres of food just on one farm. Like the traps are set. The big boys just got to get out of the Coliseum and they're mine.
Well, we know like the next few days are going to be perhaps the best time to see those deer. So we're going to talk about that more. That's why we're going to do this as a two-parter. So make sure to kind of stay tuned for the next episode that's going to come out here in a little bit. Why don't you give us a quick lowdown and a preview for what's going to happen in the next episode?
Okay. Well, the lowdown is brought to you by our two sponsors, okay? We have White Gold. The White Gold, this is White Gold Clover Mix. This is the Clover Rush. This is one of my favorites. Get ready for frost seeding. Look up White Gold Deer Feed. This is fresh scent, fresh seed sent to your door. I know where it comes from. I know the hands that handle it. I know how it's bagged. They're out of Michigan, and they're great friends. So check them out. Go give them a follow, give them a like. White Gold deerfeed.com. And then we have the Lowdown. This is the Lowdown. This is Hunter's Mate out of Wausau, Wisconsin.
They've posted several times.
Oh yeah, it's Wausau. It's like every time I remember it,
I don't know.
Every time I remember it, I mess it up. But Wausau, and this is the lowdownviewer.com. This is a 9-inch HD color touchscreen. This is where I look, capture, hold, and it's flipping fast, man. It's super simple, and you can capture all your big bucks. My friend Kirk that was in, he's like, what is this Lowdown like high speed viewer that you got? And I went and I pulled it out, and I went, oh, you want to see all the bucks on our farm? And I just started swiping on them, and he could watch videos and pictures on this Lowdown high speed viewer. And I was like, yeah, I've got all the pictures in full quality HD for you to look at of all of our big bucks, even the 2 that you shot, all on one card. There's a save card and an SD card for you to put in and then transfer what you need. And you can pick and choose and blow them up and show them and share them. And so that's the Lowdown. And the Lowdown for this week is you have to be the trail camera. I implore you to stop messaging me and saying, do you think this day is going to be better than this day? Okay, these people ask me the silliest questions. Listen to me, okay? I'm in the same boat as you. I have a property that I hunt and I play the wind on. I know from years past where the big boys like to go have deer intercourse in and fight their friends and do their thing. I know from years past where that is. I'm going to hunt as close to that as possible without telling them that I'm in the game. I am going to be more patient at this time of year than I've ever been. I'm going to look at it as a marathon, not a race. I'm not going to let my emotions get a hold of me. I'm not going to let myself talk myself out that I'm not in the right place. I am going to make the right decision. And just like earlier today when we were looking on the Tacticams, when the big deer stands up, the day he stands up, he's going to walk in front of most of your tree stands on your property because he's going to go through all the deer trails. He's going to walk through, he's going to go through, and it's not going to matter what stand you pick as long as you're staying in the game, happy. And if you're starting to get mentally ill by letting the deer become an idol, by letting the deer become something more than what it is, a big, fuzzy, furry goat, then you're missing the point of hunting. Recalibrate, take a nap, sit next to a tree and just sit there with your bow and eat your lunch, or just have a talk with God and just pray, or whatever you got to do, because I see it every single day when people message me. They have let the deer and the idol and the hunt and the obsession win, and they're losing their minds. And just when they've lost their mind, they've exhausted themselves, they give up, and that's when the deer start moving. The pressure, he should move, and then he doesn't, and then you give up, and then the next day he moves, and you know it's going to happen. So at the end of the day, if you're set up correctly, they're not going to win. They're not going to win.
That is the Lowdown.
And the 13th, 14th, and 15th is what we're going to talk about next, because it is the zombie full moon walk, different than the October vampire walk. And that is what we're going to talk about next on part 2. So you're going to want to listen to today. Today you're going to want to listen to the episode 14 and episode 15, which is going to be all about the zombie walk, full moon, after the lockdown.
All right. Yeah, we're going to be releasing those back-to-back as quickly as we can get them out. So stay tuned for what's coming next.
Looking forward to part 2.